Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Abraham Guerrero. Guerrero was shot and killed on Sunday, December 28, 2008 in the 12,000 block of Corrientes Street in Pacoima, according to LA County coroner records. Leticia Marie Montoya and Sergio Flores were subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. At about 2 a.m. on December 28, 2008, Montenegro, Perez, and the victim were standing outside the victim's house on Corrientes Street in Pacoima. A white car drove by the house, made a U-turn, and returned with its headlights off. A rifle was protruding from the front passenger window. The car stopped and the front passenger asked the men where they were from. Perez replied, "We're not from anywhere." Perez grabbed the barrel of the rifle and tried to wrest it away. 3 or 4 shots were fired, and Perez let go of the barrel. The victim was shot in the arm and chest and died from his injuries. Later that night, Perez told police the shooter was a bald male with facial hair and big eyes. Perez also said the shooter might have been wearing a hoodie. 2 days after the shooting, Montenegro and Perez worked with a police sketch artist to create a composite sketch of the shooter. Several weeks after the shooting, Montenegro and Perez were shown a photographic lineup that included defendant Flores. They each identified Flores as the possible shooter, but neither was certain of his identification. Several months later, Montenegro and Perez identified Flores as the possible shooter during the live lineup. Again, neither was certain of his identification. The eyewitness identifications of defendant Flores were buttressed by testimony of an informant, Jose Andalon, a purported shot caller for the Pacoima Southside Locos. Andalon testified against both defendants in this case in exchange for a dismissal of numerous charges and a favorable sentence in his unrelated burglary case. Both juries were informed of Andalon's criminal background and the plea agreement. Andalon testified that he was a founding member of Little Pacoima, which became affiliated with Pacoima Southside Locos. Andalon claimed to be a Pacoima Southside Locos gang shot caller when the shooting occurred. He identified defendants Montoya and Flores as members of that gang and said he loved Montoya like a sister. The Pacoima Southside Locos rival gang is the Pacoima Van Nuys Boys and his clique Anybody Killers. 2 months before the shooting in this case, defendant Flores told Andalon that he had stabbed up a PV&B gang member who was chasing him, that other PV&B gang members had followed him home, written on his wall, and were looking for him. 1 month before the shooting in this case, Andalon gave defendant Flores a rifle. In early December 2008, PV&B members shot several Pacoima Southside Locos members on Wingo Street. The shooting in this case occurred on December 28, a few weeks after the shooting on Wingo Street. Hours after the shooting in this case, defendant Flores called Andalon and said, "I smoked the fools," meaning he had killed a rival gang member. Flores told Andalon that after he learned that PV&B ABK gang members were outside on Corrientes Street, they went in Vital Gomez's car to Corrientes Street where some people were standing outside. Flores asked where they were from, then fired the gun until the clip was empty. The deceased victim, Guerrero, was wearing a hat with the letter A, which is the insignia of ABK. Flores said he had gotten get back for what they had done to him. After receiving this news, Andalon immediately called defendant Montoya at her workplace to say what the fuck happened. Montoya said she couldn't talk on her work phone, so Andalon called her back on her cell phone. Montoya told Andalon that while she and defendant Flores were getting high on PCP, they discussed the shooting on Wingo Street and the incident where Flores got jumped. They both felt they had to do something, and they walked to defendant Flores' house where Flores retrieved the rifle. They walked back to Montoya's house carrying the rifle between them like they were a couple hugging. When they arrived at her house, they learned that PV&B ABK gang members were hanging out outside on Corrientes. Montoya took Gomez's car keys and drove defendant Flores, who was in the front seat, and Jose Oyoque, known as Gordo, who was in the back seat, to Corrientes Street. Montoya made a U-turn, turned off the headlights, and drove up to a group of people in front of a house. Flores got out and told them where they were from. Before he even answered, he pulled the trigger and shot them. On the way home, Montoya damaged Gomez's car by hitting the curb. When defendant Montoya was arrested and interviewed about this shooting, she gave a taped statement that was played at trial for her jury only. Montoya said that she was worried about people thinking she was a snitch, but she was, quote, "not gonna go down for this shit." Andalon testified that he was in charge of the gang when the shooting occurred, but denied ordering the shooting. The gang had agreed to keep the shooting a secret after learning that Guerrero, the victim, was a police explorer and it was a big deal. Andalon claimed that because he had snitched on defendants, there was a hit on his life and his family members would have to relocate. Defendants Leticia Montoya and Sergio Flores were each charged with 1 count of murder and 1 count of shooting from a motor vehicle, including gun and gang allegations. In addition, Flores was charged with 1 count of unlawful firearm activity. In a joint trial to separate juries, defendants were convicted on all counts, with sustained findings on the gun and gang allegations. Montoya was also found to have suffered a prior prison term. She received a sentence of 51 years to life. Flores received a sentence of 50 years and 8 months to life. Abraham Guerrero was 22 years old at the time of death.